So, hello and welcome to another episode of the Sliding Doors podcast. For those of you that are unfamiliar, we are going to run through three categories today. It's going to be very similar to kind of other podcast formats you may be aware of. We're not going to mention them just in case, but we're going to run through kind of love and work and kind of wild card, what if situations, those sliding door moments that you kind of reflect on that have kind of happened in your past. My illustrious guest today is Sam Matthews. So I know Sam for a long time from, again, another Primark alumni. They're not all going to be Primark guests, I promise. But yeah, over to you. Hello, Sam.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thank you for coming on.
That's all right. I managed to clear out my incredibly busy schedule of looking after my dog. Yeah.
Well, just thanks so much, mate, for clearing that diary.
So
we're going to kick off straight into the kind of the first category, which like I say is all around love and relationships. Let's talk about your kind of what if moment.
Well, so I've seen your previous episodes, Robert. So I prepared a little bit. My answers haven't written anything down, but my probably biggest one is kind of indirectly linked was not going to university.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't have started my relationship with my girlfriend, who I have been with now for 10 years.
Wow.
Which I tell people is almost as old as I look.
Yeah, so let's give her, obviously I know who your girlfriend is, but let's give her a shout out.
That's Danielle, who used to work on lower ground fitting rooms.
Yeah, also a Primark alumni.
Yeah, that's where I'm sure many relationships have started from. So yeah, what happened was, to give a quick cap of the situation, we both worked there. She worked there before I did. We met because we worked on the same floor. I was only at Primark for a good 3 months, and then I had to go to uni. Didn't really want to go to uni, to be honest, but it was kind of expected of me, just because I had the kind of capability. I'm not the smartest person, but I was smart enough, and I knew what I liked to do.
What were you going to study? Sorry.
I was going to do journalism at Portsmouth, and nothing wrong with Portsmouth Uni. It was a really good uni. I had this kind of preconceived notion of, I didn't kind of feel like a uni person, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of thought I'd get there and I'd say, "Excuse me, do you know where the English block is?" And the answer I'd envisioned getting was, "Sorry, I'm at uni. I can't stop and talk to you." Which kind of seems a bit stupid, but yeah, I got there and I kind of, that vibe was kind of, I didn't kind of feel as I was chatting to people that I was kind of on that wavelength. So I pretty quickly spoke up after a week or two. But I was kind of worried that my mum might be disappointed because, and it's a bit of a nightmare from a logistics point of view as well. You've moved all your stuff down there because I was in halls, and you don't want to. I didn't want to cause a fuss, really. But if I to any piece of advice to someone listening to this, if you might be feeling in that situation, say something.
Yeah.
Because I'm not an anti-uni advocate by any means, but I don't think people should be pushed into it if they don't want to do it.
And I get that absolutely. So in terms of my experience, like, I never saw myself as a uni person either. Didn't go to uni. Obviously, took the decision, post kind of retail to kind of transition into HR, do the qualification, all that kind of stuff. But I had probably a similar experience to you on a slightly smaller scale. Around leaving school, everyone kind of quote unquote knew what they wanted to do. Had these grand plans. I had no plan. So kind of found myself going, I'll go to sixth form. No one else in kind of had gone to that route previously in my family, and it was all that pressure of going and doing more education, kind of figuring out a career path. And
it's a scary time, especially when everyone around you is like, "Oh yeah, I'm really set on exactly what I want to do," and then if you're there thinking, "Oh crap, I don't know, I haven't got a clue," I know the stuff I like, what I want to do. I don't really know. So it is a scary time when other people are around you. And I think sometimes people give it the big one and being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, gonna do this. But you don't know, like even now, we're not, you could take a left turn in a career path. I don't think it's too late to change anything you want to do.
No.
So that's
So you
my little nugget of advice.
so you kind of you sack off Portsmouth, and
Yeah.
then in terms of kind of going back to Primark, was it? Or
Yeah, so it was weird. So I wasn't kind of doing anything for a bit. And then I got a phone call from someone who doesn't work there anymore in HR. And she was a lovely woman, but I won't name her name. And she said, oh, you haven't turned up for work for a while. And I was like, oh, I left.
yeah.
And she was like, oh, did you? I was like, yeah, I handed my notice in. But it obviously just never reached the people that it should have reached. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll take off the books then. And I was like, oh, actually, no, I'm my situations have changed, so can I come back? And she was like, well, you're still down as being here, so yeah. And I actually got an investigation for not turning up to work for 4 weeks when I came back. And I was like, oh, well, I got told to turn up. But then in that time, the person had left.
Mm.
So it was a bit of a miscommunication on that front. So I was a bit confused as to why I got nicked in that sense. But it worked out better because then, yeah, then I met Danielle then in a couple of months preceding after that. And then, yeah, we started going out and then the rest is history, they say. But yeah, if I wouldn't have done that,
No.
very, very unlikely because she was at uni. She went to University of West of England. We would have gone like that. So yeah,
And
I'm
it's,
very
and it's
thankful
interesting
because
for those that haven't worked in Primark, and I'm sure there's a few of you in Bristol that haven't. It was almost like you say, who was going out of who in terms of at some times, because there was just that kind of that sweet spot almost, wasn't it, of kind of people of all a similar age, kind of you were all in one place for a long part of your day ultimately.
yeah,
And
it was with retail work as well. I think you share the this is pretty crap, isn't it?
yeah,
But we're only here to get some money so we can go out the weekends. That was what the weekend work was anyway. And
and
so
then,
I think that helped when I eventually became supervisor and I worked the odd Saturday. That helped, I think, with being able to get on the same level as the weekend staff. Because I started there, I knew I was like, look, guys, I know you don't want to be here, but the easier we work and the smoother we work, we just get through it quicker. And I think that actually helped me in the end. So
that was that's almost common sense, Sam. That doesn't sound
yeah,
kind of in line with kind of how it was a lot of the time, to be honest.
yeah, let's just get through it.
So moving on to work, obviously we've kind of touched on Primark as part of your kind of love one, but in terms of the next subject, obviously is around work. So if what are you kind of, like I say, what are you doing now, and what is your kind of what if moment around work? Is it linked to Primark?
It was kind of my one I've got for work is a bit sort of later on, so I took a chance basically. So it does kind of fit the remit of what you talk about on here. So I was working in retail for a while, and I kind of gradually, just by being around for as long as I had been, went up the ranks, and then went to another store as a deputy manager, and then the store manager was, I'm not going to name his name either. He was a nice guy. He was nice to me, but he did some stuff basically he shouldn't have been doing, and it was affecting me and the supervisor at the time. So it got to a point where it was like, well, we're kind of suffering for this, and he's kind of getting away with it. So, and then we got sort of pushed by the area manager to say what's going on, and then he basically got caught out for everything. And during his investigation, when they broke for lunch, he just never came back.
Okay. That's
then
one way to deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. So just he just walked out. So then I sort of fell into being a store manager when I really wasn't ready for it, and I knew I wasn't ready for it, and I told him that. But it was like, until we get someone else, that's what you got to do. So now I was like, I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. It was affecting like my personal life as well, because you know, as you all know, it takes up a lot of your time, and it can be quite draining. As much as it's not quote unquote hard work,
And this is the
pretty,
thing.
it's exhausting.
This is the myth, isn't it? I think I'm glad you brought that up. That is the myth, I think, of retail. People's opinion is that it's not hard work, but actually, the higher up you go, the more you have to consider. Like you say, you've quite openly admitted there you weren't ready to be store manager, which I think is quite a brave thing to do. So I commend that, and I would relate in terms of I left Primark to go and be a store manager. I wasn't ready to be a store manager at that point either. Thought I was, because I think you kind of go from this big, massive kind of machine that is Primark, and you're very well supported, to maybe a smaller company, and we won't name names, but we both know who we went to, and I think that you kind of go to those sort of places where the structure isn't as good as it was in maybe Primark. Give them their due. The
I could appreciate they were a newer company as well, but
yeah,
it was quite a drastic. You could go to a new company and it could be great. So I don't think that's necessarily reflective. New doesn't necessarily equal bad.
No, not at all. And you're right. I think there's, you kind of reflect on that and go, I wasn't ready for it, but I had to kind of step in and
to find out you weren't ready for it if you don't make that jump.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did that, and then one of my friends sort of turned around and was like, he was working sort of just a standard office job, as it were, and then I can't remember how exactly he found out about it, but then in 2017, I think it was, he started doing QA work for a company that he got to play video games for a living.
Okay. So for those that are, so I know what QA is, but for those that don't, can you just expand on that?
So that's quality assurance work. So basically the testing of a product, you find out where its pitfalls are, what makes it break, stuff like that. So a bit more common in things like software and hardware and things like that. So you could play video games, find out where they didn't work, and then you report back to the developers and say, please fix this. So he was doing that, and I was like, oh, that's great. I love video games. I do that all the time that I'm not doing other stuff. And I sort of said, oh, you can mention my name if you want, sort of, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not really being serious. But then a position came up, and they said, oh, come and interview. And that was, whilst that was great, and that was something I really wanted to do, it was quite a big leap because it was a much bigger commute. So I'm in Bristol, and the office was in Cardiff, so it required I could have driven, but I wasn't like, I didn't really want to do that every day if I don't have to. So it mean getting the train, which is obviously going to cost. It was less money, not hugely less money, but still less money. And it was weighing up the decisions of, do I want to take this jump for something I want to do versus safety.
And do you think that, kind of, if you hadn't taken that, where do you think you would have been? Do you think you would have stayed in retail?
I think probably, yeah. Maybe I might be working another in an office job or something like that, but I don't think, I mean, you can technically class what I do as an office job now, and that I am in an office, but it's not really, the structure doesn't really follow that. So I think don't think I'd be in as good a place, because if I wouldn't have taken that role, as much as it was contract, and it was because it's done on a project basis, because obviously they're not always in the stage of testing.
Yeah.
So it was, this could be until, I think I literally started in January, and it was like, this could be until October, and then we might not have anything for another 3-4 months. So there's a risk in that sense. There was a lot of factors, but I discussed it with Danielle and asked, like, my mum, got as much input as I could. And I think it's hard because I don't want to recommend it to everybody, because not everybody was in the luxurious position of, I had a position of, my Danielle, my girlfriend, was very supportive of me. My parents were, or grandparents as well. And I'm in a position that if I absolutely needed to, I could get some sort of help in some form from my parents or grandparents. But I can appreciate not everybody's in that situation. So I had a bit more of a safety net underneath me. So while I would say I think generally people should gamble on something that they're passionate about, do as much due diligence as you can before you make that leap. Don't just be like, oh yeah, that's great, go into it.
And do you think your decision was influenced by the situation in terms of kind of where you say you touched on the situation you were thrown into as that kind of temporary store manager was affecting kind of personal life and stuff like that. Do you think that kind of affected whilst you had the safety net, but do you think that gave you the extra push to kind of take that risk, do you think, in terms of
I think so. Yeah. I think because it was, I think the vast majority of people do their jobs because we got to do it, and you kind of get stuck in the cycle of, well, I need to kind of do this now to keep my keep paying my rent, keep paying my mortgage. But when it was, I would come home and I was knackered, and I couldn't be bothered to cook, didn't really want to go out because I was like, oh, I've got to do this, and I was working fairly long days, and it takes up pretty much all of your time. When it was encroaching into my personal life and affecting relationships, like I wasn't really seeing a lot of my family, stuff like that. I think that's when you need to evaluate a bit more. So I think most people, it's probably more damaging sometimes when your job's just all right, because it's not, I hear the phrase a lot, not bad enough to leave, not good enough to stay.
Yeah.
So you kind of get stuck in the middle. But yeah, I would, especially for something you're passionate about, think about making that leap. But I know it's do your due diligence is what I would say to most people, because
I fully
look
agree.
before you leap.
I fully agree. I think that, so I probably took the other route in terms of making the decision to leave, the kind of, like I say, left Primark to go and be a store manager, wasn't quite ready, and then it just,
but that made you reevaluate, right? That made you think, okay, well, what do I want to do now?
Maybe kind of spiral into, I don't want to be, like you say, it affected kind of personal life, like you say, had that support from my wife Katie in terms of kind of, if you're really not happy, your happiness is ultimately the most important.
And that goes a long way in helping your decision, because you're thinking, you don't want to be selfish in the decisions. Like, I don't want to have it where your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, has to puts more pressure on them. So
and she was like, you've got to make the right decision for you. Made the jump, kind of left, and I was like, I know I can get a job somewhere that will be of equal pay or whatever. And then I did stay in retail for a bit longer before kind of, but that certainly helped me realize kind of where I wanted to be long term, because then kind of got back into retail, realized it was the people bit I liked, kind of, well, okay, I need to look into this bit more. But I had a firmer kind of grind under me in terms of the company I went to next. And that obviously has led me to where I am. So like you say, I don't think you can regret decisions, but like you say, due diligence and your checks and balances, and obviously good support are absolutely key. So then on to kind of our final topic, and this is where I always get a little bit nervous because I hand it over to our guests. So Sam, obviously it's kind of the wild card what if moment, and it's very much in your hands.
Ooh. It wasn't a decision that I made really, but it was one that happened when I was younger. And I don't mind, it's weird when you talk about sort of stuff, especially like things that are quite touchy subjects, people kind of get a bit funny. But my dad passed away when I was quite young, when I was about 8. And I think for on first glance, it probably, obviously that's a traumatic event. That's terrible to happen to anybody. But he was quite like a central figure in like in his own family. In my family, my brother was I think my mum was just about to give birth to my brother at that time. And that probably had like a knock-on effect to me, but which didn't really manifested itself in kind of a weird way. And that came to light, I think, when I went to senior school, and I went into school. But I went to a school in Bristol. It was quite a good school. You had to take like entrance exams and stuff to get in. And I for whatever reason, I just didn't like it there. I didn't have, like, no one I really knew went there. It just wasn't a fun experience. I didn't really know. I couldn't tell you why now.
No.
I didn't like it and find it so sort of like horrific to go there. Because there was no reason on the street. It's not like I struggled with the work or anything like that. And it was probably one made by my mum, really.
Yeah.
And that she basically wrote off that year because I was like, there was weeks where I didn't go, and then I'd do like the morning, and it was a bit, I felt sort of maybe bad in a way for the stress I put her under, because it probably took a toll on her. But then she made the decision to say, look, scrap that off, and then she put me into school with a few more of my friends. It's a bit more of a normal school. And then went there, started there, and then year 8, and it was fine. And then I've kept some of those friendships now to this day.
Yeah,
I've made like friends for life basically. And then that led on to, I got good enough grades in stuff back when it was actually A's and B's and not all this 1s and 2s or whatever it is. I actually had to sit my exams and like the people this year. Count yourself lucky.
So just in terms of, I just, you respond however you want, I guess. But you obviously, I've lost my dad as well. Obviously, I lost my dad at a very different point to yourself. And I think that, in terms of not to just bring it back to the kind of what if moments and stuff, but how do you think that, because obviously that age is such a, like, obviously my son's around that age, and I think how would he cope if I wasn't here?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of instantly sparked in my mind. So how did you react? Because obviously you were at such an age that you probably didn't appreciate in terms of your reactions, but how do you think that then kind of shaped not just necessarily the school element, but in terms of kind of wanting to do well, that kind of, how do you think that happened for you?
I don't know if to see it as like it was more the social impact it had, and I generally don't tell people, because the second you do, it kind of, I think anyway, it kind of, people treat you maybe a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was, I mean, I'm making no secret of it. When I was a kid, I was fairly spoiled. I didn't feel like I've taken that into my adult life, but like I was kind of the only kid around at that time. So, and I've got quite a big family. So I think I got a lot of attention and stuff. And if I wanted a new toy or whatever, I could have it basically. And I think that maybe changed, or maybe like amplified that to some degree. And so I think in a way it's made me more aware in my adult life to be a bit more socially aware, maybe, because I think when that was in the last year or so of junior school, and it was like a massive thing. Like all the kids were told, oh, Sam's lost his dad, and it was kind of made aware. And I kind of I even knew then, I was like, this doesn't feel right. Everyone kind of felt a bit like the Truman Show, like everyone's being very specific towards me, and I kind of didn't like that. So it kind of made me a bit more aware in my adult life, I guess. That's good. Now that I think about it, yeah, that's probably where that's come from. But it was obviously a terrible thing, but like a weird thing to happen as well. It's like kind of has invisible consequences. I don't know if anyone else has the same experience, but that was
Yeah.
my.
And I fully get that Truman Show bit in terms of like my dad passed away at the weirdest time, like literally the day after my 30th birthday. So, fully adult, fully kind of not, quote unquote, don't need dad as much, but at the same time, you're in work situations. Then you are probably more,
You just got more independence, haven't you? I
yeah,
guess
and
so, but
you're
that
more
doesn't mean.
socially out there, I guess, in terms of kind of it had been, I'd finished work on a Friday. We were out celebrating my birthday as like a work thing. And I had all these plans over the weekend for my birthday. Then Monday morning, you're not in. Like, and everyone's like, kind of then, oh, you're not in because you're hungover, or you're
Yeah,
like, have no idea of this, like you say, of the situation. And then all of a sudden, you're kind of facing up to telling people that you don't necessarily want to tell, if that makes sense, because you're kind of it's
yeah, it's weird.
yours.
Telling people is sometimes more awkward or annoying than.
Because of their reaction,
um
isn't it? Like you say, they're not
yeah,
necessarily socially aware of how to react to what you're experiencing. It's a very unique experience, and I think
yeah,
that
grief is a weird one. Yeah, like everyone deals with it their own way, and I think especially with kids, they say it can manifest itself in weird ways, and that was, I guess, the way it did for me. And I think my even now when stuff happens, I think my family worry about me a bit more. My mum, I know my mum does, um, especially with like big changes. It even happened when I went to one of my jobs. Um, Even the job I had now, I
yeah,
kind of had like um, a bit of like a panicky anxiety attack, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like the big change. I can't deal with this. I just want to get away from it. But then if you stick through it, then you get at the other side. So we call it a wobble. I have a wobble, but I'm having less and less of those as I get older. Mainly because I can't be bothered.
and I
Too
think I think
tired.
I think that's really important to share, that it's okay to have a wobble in terms of,
Yeah, for sure. It's
I
normal, I think.
yeah, and I certainly have a wobble. I'm more so not with the big things, so not with like birthdays or Christmas. Like, as stupid as it sounds, and I hope other people will relate to this, it's not the big things, because the big things are supported by other people.
Yeah,
You
people
enjoy Christmas
acknowledge
birthday with
they're
other
acknowledging
people.
the outside that they're big. Yeah.
But it's the little things. So obviously, like I've got two children. When they do something for the first time, or they're doing something that I know my dad could relate to, like,
Mm.
Zach started Cubs this year. My dad used to be a scout leader. He would have loved that. It's those moments that sting the most, that cause
Yeah.
the wobble, quote unquote, because that's the moment where you go, that's the one I want to pick up the phone to him. It's not, I don't want to pick up the phone to say Merry Christmas. That is a given.
Mm.
It's the the not so big that you can, or not so big to the wider world, but big to you, the
Yeah.
personal bigs, that you kind of go, that's a wobble, because I wanted to be able to call him there. I can't call him, and that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't been through it.
Yeah, yeah. Like as to give sort of a parallel example, um, like obviously I've got kids myself. I've got a furry baby with a puppy. Um, but yeah, there's like certain is where there's certain like video games I can't play because I know I used to play them with my dad or that he used to play them. Or like there's certain songs that I don't like listening to
Mm.
because they remind me of him. Yeah, it's weird little things like that. So um, yeah, the smaller stuff is easier to, well, not easier, but like simpler to deal with yourself, but then more awkward to profess to other people, I guess, because they're like,
Yeah,
well, that's just, you mean you can't play Super Mario Kart, you weirdo. No, that's that. Oh no, that
that
was
was,
my
yeah.
dad's thing. So
I think that's a really good share, mate, in terms of, and I hope people listening, or that tune in, will relate to that in some way. Not necessarily now, but certainly in in future, if things change in your lives, that you can kind of come back to this, and you know, it's quite common out there now that it's okay to not be okay. I think we can certainly profess that in terms of you know, I live that in terms of kind of, I guess, dealing with what I've dealt with, and I'm sure you would kind of echo that in terms of kind of, it is all about your support network when these things happen. And
sure.
yeah, I think absolutely kind of sharing that will hopefully, even if it helps one person, I think that's a really good share.
That's what they say, and it's worth doing, even if it's only one.
But then, thank you. That's the end of the podcast. If you can like, share, subscribe in all your normal places, guys, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, Sam, for the chat today.
Cheers, mate.